For most of human history, food meant land. It meant plows cutting into soil, irrigation canals carving across valleys, and endless battles over who controlled the riverbanks. Civilization, as we are taught, rose from agriculture rooted in dirt. If you wanted to feed a city, you needed fields stretching beyond the horizon. But what if the most efficient farms in the world were never on land at all? What if entire cities were once fed by gardens that floated beneath the surface of the sea, powered not by diesel pumps or electric grids, but by nothing more than the rhythm of tides and the pull of the moon? Long before industrial fishing fleets stripped oceans bare, coastal civilizations mastered a radically different system. They did not hunt the sea as predators, they cultivated it as gardeners. This is the story of the ancient underwater garden systems of East Asia, where communities transformed shallow bays into vast marine farms that required no fresh water, no fertilizer, and no mechanical energy. These were tidal food engines, and in some regions, they fed entire cities. To understand how this was possible, we need to travel to the coasts of what is now China and Korea, where marine aquaculture dates back more than 1,000 years. By the time of the Tang dynasty in China, around the 7th to 10th centuries, coastal communities were already cultivating seaweed and shellfish in carefully managed marine plots. These were not random fishing grounds, they were structured underwater fields. In regions like Fujian and Zhejiang, farmers planted long lines of kelp and other edible seaweeds in nearshore waters where tidal currents flowed predictably. Wooden stakes were driven into the seabed, and ropes were strung between them just below the surface. Onto these ropes, seaweed spores were attached, allowing entire underwater canopies to grow vertically in the water column. Unlike terrestrial crops, these marine plants did not require irrigation because they were already immersed in nutrient-rich water. They did not require synthetic fertilizer because coastal upwellings and tidal mixing delivered dissolved nitrogen and phosphorus directly to their tissues. And they did not require pesticides because the ocean's ecology, when balanced, regulates itself through complex food webs. The farm did not fight nature, it collaborated with it. The true brilliance of these underwater gardens was their vertical design. On land, agriculture is constrained by two dimensions. You plant across a field. Underwater, farmers exploited the third dimension. Crops grew from surface to seafloor, maximizing productivity per square meter. In modern terms, this is known as three-dimensional ocean farming, but centuries ago it was simply common sense. Seaweeds like kelp grow extraordinarily fast. Some species can extend more than half a meter in a single day under optimal conditions. Because they absorb dissolved carbon dioxide and nutrients directly from seawater, their growth rate is not limited by soil depletion in the same way as terrestrial crops. As these underwater forests matured, they created habitats for shellfish. Oysters, mussels, and scallops were suspended on adjacent lines or grown in seabed plots beneath the kelp canopy. The seaweed absorbed excess nutrients from the water, improving clarity and oxygen levels. The shellfish filtered plankton, further purifying the ecosystem. This was not monoculture, it was marine polyculture. Each species supported the others. Seaweed stabilized water chemistry, shellfish improved water quality. Small fish sheltered within the structures, feeding local communities or supporting higher trophic species. The farm functioned as a living reef, engineered by human hands, but powered by tidal energy. No pumps, no irrigation ditches, no tractors, only currents. The physics behind this system is deceptively simple. Tides are driven by the gravitational interaction between Earth and the Moon. Twice a day, coastal waters rise and fall, generating horizontal flow. In narrow bays and inlets, this movement accelerates, creating predictable nutrient fluxes. Ancient farmers learned to position their marine plots in precisely these zones of gentle but consistent flow. Too strong a current would tear crops away. Too weak a current would starve them of nutrients. The ideal location created a natural conveyor belt of fertility. In effect, the ocean became a circulating hydroponic system. By the Song dynasty, marine farming had expanded significantly. Historical records describe extensive seaweed cultivation along China's eastern seaboard. These products were not minor supplements to the diet. They were traded, preserved, and distributed inland, contributing to food security in some of the most densely populated regions of the medieval world. Across the Yellow Sea and Korea, similar systems developed. Coastal communities constructed bamboo frameworks to cultivate sea mustard and laver, staples that remain central to Korean cuisine today. These underwater fields could be expanded modularly. A village could increase production by adding more lines, rather than clearing more forest. This was agricultural intensification without deforestation. The caloric efficiency of marine crops is often underestimated. Seaweed contains carbohydrates, fiber, iodine, iron, and trace minerals, essential for human health. When integrated with shellfish production, the protein output per square meter can rival or exceed many terrestrial systems. Modern research into integrated multi-trophic aquaculture confirms what ancient farmers practiced intuitively. By combining species from different levels of the food web, waste from one becomes input for another. The result is higher productivity with lower environmental impact. What makes this ancient underwater garden system so remarkable is not merely its productivity, but its energy source. Every modern agricultural system is fundamentally dependent on external energy inputs. Fossil fuels power tractors, produce synthetic nitrogen fertilizers, and transport food across continents. Even irrigation relies on electric pumps or gravity-fed dams that require infrastructure. The underwater garden relied on gravitational energy transferred through tides. The moon was the engine. Nutrient delivery, oxygenation, and waste dispersal occurred automatically through tidal exchange. There was no need to divert rivers or drill wells. There was no need to mine phosphorus or fix atmospheric nitrogen through industrial chemistry. The ocean handled circulation. In some regions today, particularly along China's coast, marine aquaculture zones stretch for kilometers, forming geometric patterns visible from satellite imagery. While modern materials have replaced bamboo with plastic floats and synthetic ropes, the underlying principle remains unchanged from its ancient origins. Entire coastal cities now derive significant portions of their seafood and sea vegetable supply from these systems. They operate as semi-open ecological farms, blending human design with natural hydrodynamics. Of course, no system is immune to mismanagement. When scaled without ecological restraint, even marine farms can disrupt local environments. However, when aligned with carrying capacity and tidal dynamics, underwater agriculture demonstrates an astonishing truth. Food production does not require soil, it requires flow. As global freshwater scarcity intensifies and arable land faces degradation from erosion, salinization, and urban sprawl, the concept of underwater gardening becomes less an ancient curiosity and more a strategic necessity. Oceans cover over 70% of the planet's surface, yet we derive only a small fraction of our calories directly from marine plant cultivation. The ancients understood that the boundary between land and sea was not a hard line, but a gradient of opportunity. They cultivated the littoral zone, where sunlight penetrates and currents circulate. They read the tides as farmers read rainfall. They planted beneath the surface and harvested from floating lines. And they fed cities. This system challenges a core assumption of modern civilization, that feeding large populations requires expanding horizontally across landscapes. The underwater garden expands vertically into a medium already in motion. It does not compete for fresh water with cities. It does not require clearing forests. It does not demand topsoil built over millennia. It harnesses a planetary force that will outlast every industrial fuel reserve we have ever discovered. The next agricultural revolution may not involve genetically engineered seeds or taller irrigation dams. It may involve returning to an ancient insight that has been waiting beneath the surface for centuries. That the sea, when treated as a garden rather than a quarry, can sustain us. Imagine coastal megacities surrounded not by polluted harbors and abandoned docks, but by living tidal farms that sequester carbon, buffer storm surges, and produce food simultaneously. Imagine breakwaters lined with edible sea forests. Imagine urban diets supplemented by nutrient-dense marine crops grown without freshwater input. This is not speculative futurism, it is historical precedent. The underwater gardens of East Asia prove that natural water currents can replace pumps, that dissolved nutrients can replace synthetic fertilizers, and that vertical marine structures can outperform flat terrestrial fields in efficiency per square meter. In a time when climate volatility threatens conventional agriculture, the resilience of tidal systems becomes even more compelling. Tides do not depend on rainfall. They do not fail during drought. They respond to celestial mechanics that have remained stable for billions of years. The ancient underwater garden system was not merely a technique, it was a philosophy. Work with the current, plant in motion, harvest in cycles. Cities once thrived because coastal farmers understood that abundance could flow from the sea without conquest or combustion. They read the water, anchored their lines, and trusted the rhythm of the moon. Perhaps the most advanced agricultural engine on Earth has been rising and falling twice a day all along. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe so we can keep improving the channel. See you next time.